Hi there, and thanks for joining us right here on The Nation, a show where we like to focus on information that concerns all Malaysians across the country. Now, today we will be talking about stroke, and from the National Stroke Association of Malaysia, or NASAM, is my guest, Mr. Qamer Khan, who is the Rehabilitation Training and Development Head. Mr. Khan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. Now, we want to shed light on this particular life-threatening condition, which is stroke, but also to say that there is life after stroke. Now, NASAM is Southeast Asia's first non-profit organization that offers rehabilitation services for stroke survivors and to support for their families as well. We've got this quick video. Let's take a look first.
The fact that now that I have gained my speech and I'm able to move about, I'm able to drive, and I'm able to also help others.
Being in NASAM, you get a group of people who has the same problems, who has the same disability.
In occupational therapy, physiotherapy helps the strokee to recover strength in their limbs. The speech and language therapist would conduct exercises that strengthens their vocal cords, strengthens their mouth muscles. Then the other aspect of therapy is occupational. We try to teach the strokees everyday skills, and when the strokee can do that, they regain some measure of independence, and that gives them confidence to reintegrate into society. Counseling is equally important because there is a lot of emotional and psychological stress that happens both for the strokee and also for the caregiver.
NASAM goes about the process of awareness by holding talks, having open forums and public events. They also have a number of publications that will also allow people to read up and be aware of the rehabilitation that it does, and also the awareness of stroke prevention. NASAM depends on the individual, and corporates give generously to their cause. Well, the first thing to do is to...
Actually, when I first came, many of the present students are not able to move. And now, imagine they're standing doing Qigong with me. They even surprised themselves that they could, oh, actually, being a strokee, I could do this again, you know. Yeah. So that makes my day, definitely.
And there we see some of the images of NASAM's activities, the National Stroke Association of Malaysia. Now, Mr. Khan, tell us a little bit more about NASAM, its background, some of the activities, vision and mission.
Okay, so NASAM was founded by our founder chairman, Jessy Chahal, who herself is a stroke survivor. So she had a stroke at the age of 44. She was quite young. And when she had a stroke, she was looking for places where she can go for rehabilitation. And what she found out was there were very limited avenues where she can go for rehabilitation. But since she can afford, so she can go overseas. But there are people who can't afford, right? That was the whole thing, that to provide services for those who can't afford. So once she was back, then her recovery was published by an English newspaper. So that caught the interest of many people, and they started calling her for all inquiries. And it happened so that she got so many responses for that, and she was okay. She has to start something. She can't just let it happen. So in the year of 1995, she started with a support group. whereby the stroke survivors and the family members, they will meet up once a month to discuss their issues, the problems they feel, the psychological, social problems. But soon she realized that it's not enough. Having only a support group is not going to work. So, then she said, okay, let me go a step further. They started a once a week physio session in the garage of a house, because there was no place to do it. Okay, so it started once a week. And slowly, when she saw the response of the people, that how much they needed, she finally decided, I have to start NASAM. And finally, it was established in the year 1996.
Okay, so prior to that, we didn't really have a body that looks into issues of raising awareness and providing support for the stroke survivors.
There were hospitals where you can go for rehab, but they were not stroke specific.
Yeah.
Okay, they were just for general setup. Okay, so she was looking for something, because see, stroke is not only physical impairment. There's so much of psychological impairment associated with it, right? So we were not able to. She was not able to find a place where everything it caters to all the stroke survivors' needs. That's why she said, she has to start NASAM.
So NASAM also looks into providing care for the survivors, as well as to promote the concept of stroke prevention. Also a place where families of stroke survivors can go to find internal support, place for other sort of activities. So it is a life center.
That's very important. It's not only a stroke survivor that suffers because of stroke. It's the entire family setup that's affected. Somebody has to take care of the stroke survivor. A wife, children, it can be anybody, but it disrupts the entire family setup. So, and if, for example, if it was a breadwinner who had a stroke, now imagine the whole family had to look for the resources to run their daily activities. That's quite hard. So over time, it doesn't only affect the stroke survivor, it affects the family also. They go into depression, because the activity has been changed.
You have to also provide that motivation and the counselling, and what happens if the breadwinner is affected.
Yes. So you will see a stroke person, majority of them, especially the young ones, go into depression. Okay, because their life is changed. Just a day, yesterday they were able to walk, and tomorrow they can't. There are so many things. It's not only about walking. They can't communicate. How about I can't express my things to my family? It frustrates them every day.
Very frustrating.
So, and it really leads them to depression. That's why it's important for them to have a support group whereby they can express themselves, and they see people with similar impairments, and they feel they are not only one who's suffering from this thing.
Well, NASAM initially started with one location, or rather one operating center, but now has grown to having many centers nationwide. So you have centers in Petaling, Jaya, in Ampang, in Penang, in Perak, in Malacca, Kuantan, Sabah, as well as Johor. Now, you had first joined NASAM 8 years ago while they were in Johor, and you've seen them grow from strength to strength as well. Now, tell us what happens on a daily basis at the NASAM Center.
So, usually our different centers operate differently. It depends on the situation. Each state is different. Okay, for example, talk about PJ. We start with, we have 3 group sessions in a day. 9 to 11. Each session is for 2 hours. Okay, some clubs will do only 2 sessions because the number of members that are quite less. Okay, but since PJ is a big group, the numbers are quite large, so we have 3 sessions. So it's 9 to 11, 11 to 1, and 2 to 4. Okay, so these 3 groups have been divided based on person's level of independence. If you are really independent, we call them advanced stroke survivors. So we put them in 9 to 11 group. If you are not so independent but you're still able to manage yourself, we put them in a second group. Those who are completely dependent, they are in the 3rd group. So they need more attention at that stage. At the same time, we have, not everybody can go into group. Okay, there are some stroke survivors who have issues understanding. So when you have a group of 18, they can't follow the instructions, right? So for them, we have to take them separately out. So we call them one-to-one sessions. So once we feel they are ready, we always try to push them into group at the end, because the group activities are very fun and they are very challenging. Okay, so you learn from each other. So that's our ultimate aim is to push them into group, but we have to make sure that they are ready for that. If you push them too early, then they won't recover.
That's right. Of course, it's also a period of adjustment once it has happened, and then it's a long phase for rehab, and then finally to be back on your own feet and to live your life again as normal as possible.
Okay, now there's one thing. See, stroke recovery is not. It doesn't happen in a day. It's a journey. Okay, it can take months. It can take years also. It never stops. Our brain is such that we call it plasticity in the brain. Our brain can always find a way to adjust to new things, and this adjustment never stops. It goes on and on and on. So there is no such thing that stroke recovery stops after a certain duration. People always say 6 months and then it stops. No. Yes, in 6 months it's faster, but it still continues for years and years and years. So you have to continue with the rehabilitation for all these years.
Okay, so besides the groupings that you have at the center, what are some of the other activities that takes place? Perhaps.
So this grouping is mostly about physio. Okay, we have other therapies, like we have speech therapy going on at the same time. Then we have occupational therapy also going on at the same time. Okay, then as I spoke earlier, that people who are depressed, so they need some sort of counseling. So we have certain groups we have certain volunteers who are trained to do counseling. And for peer support. Peer support is they are the stroke survivors who have recovered and they have gone back to their work. So they volunteer their time to help those who are in need. So it acts like a motivation for them. Okay, if he can recover and go back, I will also try to go there. So it works quite well for us. And this is a part of therapy. But then since ours is a community center, so we try to cater to other needs also. So we have things like cooking sessions, whereby
life skills back then.
Yes, okay. Then arts and craft. They are all activities whereby, so for example, you need to cook. So you have to first plan what you're going to cook, what ingredients you need. There's a lot of mental processing involved in all those. Although for us, it's quite fast. We can process so fast. But a stroke survivor needs time. He's very slow in processing all those things. So it works on their brain while they're trying to recall what are the ingredients he or she has to choose. And what is the procedure, which one goes first, which goes next. And at the same time, they are skills for the hand. Because they have to cut, they have to chop, use all those things. And the same thing go for hand activities like arts and craft. Then we have activities like Tai Chi, run by a volunteer. Okay.
For general wellness and flexibility again to get back your movements.
Exactly. Then we have Pilates on certain days, and we have yoga sessions on certain days. So our sessions are, it's not the same thing every day. Okay, so it's like we have a timetable. Today is this, tomorrow is this, so that the person doesn't feel bored doing the same thing every day. Although our ultimate aim is the same goal, but the approach is all different.
All different. Yeah. So many different things that are happening at the center at any one time. Now we talked a lot about a stroke, but before we go into what really classifies as a stroke, let's look at some of the facts of strokes. Now we have about 15 million people worldwide per year who are affected by stroke. Now out of this 15 million, it is reported that 5 million recover, 5 million are left disabled, and 5 million do not make it. So 5 million.
And this starts about 2007. Okay, this was published by World Health Organization in 2007. So today is 2015.
The numbers will definitely
be higher, because if you see over the time, all the risk factors, the numbers have increased over these years. So we definitely estimate these numbers will be much higher now compared to what it was in 2007.
Now there are many risk factors also involved, but in Malaysia, about 50,000 cases are reported every year, and it is the second largest cause of death.
Surpassing cancer.
Surpassing cancer. First being heart disease, and then the stroke. Now let's move into what is a stroke. What qualifies as a stroke?
Okay, in a simple term, what we say is, our brain is made up of multiple cells. Okay, we call them neurons, but cells. And these cells, like anybody else, need oxygen to survive. Okay. Due to many factors, the cells in the brain, they do not receive that oxygen, and they die. And this is stroke. The small cells in the brain dies.
There's no oxygen supply to the brain cells, and brain cells need oxygen to survive, to live, and once that oxygen supply is cut, it then affects parts of your brain. Your brain is left damaged.
Now, our brain is very complex structure. Okay, although it's quite small, but it has got multiple functions, which we usually don't realize it has. Okay, there's an area in the brain for talking. There's an area in the brain for hearing. There's an area in the brain for vision, for sensations, for movement. Now, depending which cell die, that particular function will be lost. If it's the cell, if it's the tissue, the cells that were controlling my movement, so I won't be able to move. I am paralyzed.
So no one stroke patient is the same.
No.
And the factors that affect one stroke patient may be different for the other.
Yes.
Well, we'll still be in conversation once we come back from this commercial break, so stay tuned. And welcome back to The Nation. Now today we're talking to Mr. Qamer Khan, the Rehabilitation, Training and Development Head of the National Stroke Association of Malaysia, otherwise known as NASAM. Now throughout their nationwide centre, since its inception, they have had over 5,000 people that have gone to the centre, and nationwide today, 400 active people who are taking advantage of this particular association and helping them to deal with the effects of having been a stroke survivor. Now, before the break, we talked about what really constitutes as a stroke. And now let's look at what causes a stroke, because there's so many different factors involved, right?
Yes. So now, before we classify, we have to look into two aspects. A young stroke survivor and an elderly stroke survivor. The causes are different. Okay. Usually when we talk about stroke prevention, we always focus on the common risk factor that we see in the population, although not elderly. Nowadays it affects young also. You have seen stroke patients as young as 30. Okay. So with these common risk factors, but there are certain conditions that you will see only with quite young population. So we'll talk about them a bit later. So first is a very common risk factors. Okay. And the commonest of all these you will see is high blood pressure. Okay, a person with high pressure is 6 times more risk of having a stroke compared to other population. Okay, then you will see a person with high cholesterol is at risk. A person with diabetes is at risk. A person who smokes is at risk. A person who is physically inactive is at risk. Then you will see females after menopause, quite high risk. Stress, quite high risk. Alcohol consumption, a very high risk. These are some of the very common risk factors.
And based on this, just few 7 to 8 common factors that you've mentioned, that covers almost most of us Malaysians for one factor or another.
Okay, there was a study that was it was just published in Star in February this year. This study was done by SOXO. So they had given up about 1.9 million vouchers to its members. It was to do a free blood test. Okay, out of 1.9 million, only 300,000 went for a test.
Okay.
Okay, so you see the numbers. Okay, and out of this 300,000, more than 60% had high cholesterol in their blood.
And they did not know.
I'm not sure whether they knew it before or not. At the time of the test, it was about 60% of population were having high cholesterol. Another 60% roughly were either overweight or obese. Okay, 18% had about high blood pressure, and 8% were diabetic.
So that leaves
see,
not many who are not at risk for something like stroke.
Right.
Okay. The reason I said those who perhaps got tested and then were just newly found out that they have a condition is because many a times we walk around like a time bomb, undiagnosed. We haven't got our medical checkups. We don't know if we are at risk in the first place.
That's what I think that's why there was a reply for the article where people were talking, do we think ignorance is bliss? So we tend to ignore that. Okay, I won't be the person who will suffer stroke. Maybe there's somebody else.
We always think it doesn't affect us, but one of the major truths of stroke is that it can affect anyone at any time, at any age.
At any age. So talking about stroke in young, okay, we have strokes as young as a girl named Isabel. She was born with stroke.
That's right. I have this, of course, is a rare condition, but this is little Isabel. She is in this picture, only 1 year old, and she
was born with stroke.
With a stroke.
With a stroke. And the parents only realized it after a couple of months when she was trying to move. So they realized that, okay, I think they realized that there's no symmetry in the movement. She prefers one side to other, and when she's trying to move the affected hand, the hand just shakes randomly. So they were a bit worried what's happening, and then they went for a test and for a scan, and it was told that she had a stroke.
And that is, of course, rare, but still possible?
Yes, means yeah, she was a rare, but we have conditions like whereby young children by 6-7 years have a stroke because they have some certain anomalies in their heart. Usually something if young, they will have some associated conditions, either a heart issue, but they go for a surgery. It's always associated with a risk, a complication is a stroke. Then there are certain other issues, like we had a case, Rizati, it was published in our newsletter. She's from Malacca. Okay, she had a condition called moya disease. Okay, it's a genetic disease, so it means she had it.
Born with it.
She was born with it, and over the years, over the years she had a stroke, and she will still have multiple strokes. Okay, because the condition is still there. It's a genetic issue unless she goes for a surgery to repair all those things. So these things are that we cannot do anything all about because they are genetically predisposed. But on the other hand, we have so many issues we can control it, right? Because you see, yes, it is affecting young, but the younger population is still less than the other population who is being affected by stroke.
That's right. Now, majorly those who really need to take precaution are those from the ages of 30 and above. Would that be an
I won't say
assumption?
yeah, it's just like younger people get stroke, but you can see as young as 30 people also get stroke. So you have to be careful about yourself.
So we looked at some of the factors being things from high cholesterol to high blood pressure to diabetes, unhealthy lifestyle, whether it's smoking, high intake of alcohol, not being physically active, and of course the silent killer of it all, the stress, which really affects a lot of us here in Malaysia. So what can now how do you prevent this from happening? How do you minimize this risk from
So one thing is you make a choice that, okay, I want to prevent this. So to make a choice, you have to be aware of that there is something called a stroke. And you will see the awareness is quite low for stroke. Although it's better, you can see, but it's still quite low. There's a huge population, they don't understand what stroke is all about. It's only once you know the condition exists, you can decide, okay, I make a choice of not having it. Okay, then the first thing is go for your blood test, a regular blood test. Okay, because only once you do a blood test, you will know your cholesterol levels, you will know whether you are diabetic or not. Okay? And if you monitor your blood pressure regularly, you will know your numbers for your blood pressure. Okay? It's important to maintain all these things within normal limits, because you see there was a study done in Malaysia for diabetes. Okay, and what they were telling is about, for every person diagnosed, there is one who is undiagnosed. Okay, so this undiagnosed is a person who feels he won't be having it. Okay, and even there was an article published in Star just 2 weeks back. Okay, is this lady who felt that she is doing her walking every day, she jogs every day, good physically active lady, and she thought, okay, she won't be having any such thing, and she was quite good unless she accidentally went for a blood test, and she realized that she's diabetic.
And she had no clue.
No, because she was expecting that she's physically so active, she won't get it. But by chance, she went for a test and she had it.
That's right.
And it was genetically predisposed. Her mother also is diabetic. So it runs in a family.
So one very important lesson here is to get your medical checkups done, despite of the kind of lifestyle you live. Even if you think that you are very, very healthy, still do get your medical checkup done so you know which areas need attention. And also, of course, if you're not that active and you have some of these risk factors in your life, then you know also what measures you need to take to help prevent you from being a stroke victim. Now, what are the early symptoms? What happens when one is about to get a stroke? Do we have very early signs, or is it all happening so fast?
Okay, now stroke can happen very fast. There are something called a TIA.
Okay.
We call it transient ischemic attack. So transient means it stays for a short period of time. So
it's a mini stroke?
We call it a mini stroke. Okay, its symptoms are similar to stroke, but the thing is the symptoms will last less than 24 hours.
Okay.
So what happened is, like, there was a block in the brain that stopped the blood from going, so you had symptoms. But this clot was dissolved by the body itself. Okay. Within 24 hours, and you recovered.
Okay, so does that mean 100% recovery, back to normal?
Most of the time.
Okay.
Because it didn't turn into a full-fledged stroke.
So does the person even know that they have just had a mini stroke?
No, that's the issue. So the person will realize, yes, I have numbness, or he will realize some weakness. So what he'll do is, oh, I'm tired. So he goes back home and rests. And next day, because it resolved within 24 hours, he's back.
He's back to
Right?
normal.
So he feels, okay, it was really, I was tired. But it was actually a warning sign. He's having a TIA. So what he should have done was go for a checkup, at least a blood pressure and all those things, see a doctor. He's the best person to guide you for the next step.
That's right. We'll be able to diagnose you to whether you've had the condition called the TIA. Now, is TIA common as opposed to stroke?
Yes, I think about 30 to 40% people, they will have TIA. That's what we see when we ask, when the survivor comes to us. So we ask about the history, and we try to inquire whether was there any TIA. And in about 40% of cases, there was a symptom whereby they had it varies. You know, sometimes he had only numbness. Sometimes he really had a difficulty in lifting, or he felt like the face is dropping once, or it was drooling, or he wasn't able to talk. But then the symptoms resolve, so they just go back to work.
But some of the main symptoms are, of course, the warning signs. You can use this particular, the acronym FAST, F-A-S-T, which is looking at your face, drooping one side, or having numbness. And the arms, whether you can raise it, or if it can't be raised, that's an issue, whether it's weakened or it's been numb. And then speech, slurring in speech, and like you mentioned, perhaps because of one side numbness, some drooling. And then, of course, time. Now, time is essential. The faster you get the victim to the hospital, the better. Explain this part.
So it's like somebody, if you're sitting in a place whereby there are so many people sitting around you, how to diagnose a stroke, whether the person is having, because it's like he's having it in front of you.
Right now.
Yeah. It's not like he's already collapsed and you can't see it. He's having it right now while he's sitting with you, or just somewhere around you. So the first thing you will realize is the face will turn asymmetric. So because our tone keeps our face symmetrical. So if the muscles are weak, the one side face will drop, the affected side will drop. Okay, and if you realize this is happening, ask the patient to lift both hands up. To lift our hands up, we need strength. But if he had a stroke, the muscles are paralyzed. He won't be able to lift. Okay, then ask him to. If you see both these things, ask him to talk. His speech will be slurred, or he won't be able to talk at all. If you see either of one or all the three, send him to the hospital.
Even if you have one of these warning signs,
even
it's
if
already,
one, yes, because since you're not sure, but you can see one of the sign, the best thing is take him to the hospital or send him to the hospital. And now what happens is there's a window period. If you send a person with a stroke, not all, majority of the cases, if you send them to the hospital within 3 to 4 hours of the onset, okay, the stroke can be reversed. Okay, but it has to be within that window period. But usually what happens is, if a person had a stroke, yes, sometimes they do go, if they are well educated, they will go to the hospital directly, but some of them, they prefer go back to their houses to rest, or they will go to the other professionals, okay, which are not equipped to handle this thing. Because to reverse a stroke, you have to visit a specialist hospital.
And the easiest way for that is just directly to the emergency room or emergency department to get yourself properly checked and to see if you will be diagnosed.
If this is a stroke.
Yeah.
Because only specialist hospital can reverse stroke. Clinics won't be able to do it.
So biggest and most important, another lesson perhaps is the awareness that we need to be aware that so many people can be affected by this condition. We need to take another quick commercial break, but when we come back, we will look at how the recovery process, what is involved in the rehabilitation, as well as how you can help to prevent it from happening to you. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Thanks for staying with us. You're watching The Nation. Now, today's topic is, of course, stroke, and we're speaking to Mr. Qamer Khan, who is from the National Stroke Association of Malaysia, a centre that provides support for the stroke survivor as well as for their families, and to help promote the concept of stroke prevention. Now, this is a very important and real issue that is happening to Malaysians. Every year, 50,000 cases are reported, and 1 in every 6 people worldwide will be affected by a stroke in their lifetime. Now, it can happen to anyone at any age, at any time, and in Malaysia, it's the second largest cause of death just after heart diseases. Okay, before the break, we were talking a little bit about the causes of stroke. We also were looking at some of the risk factors, but among all the risk factors, the 4 biggest ones are obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, and high blood cholesterol. Let's look at some of the stats here and to really understand the reality of this amongst us here in Malaysia.
So if you talk about high blood pressure, so a person with high blood pressure is 5 times more prone for stroke compared to other population.
5 times more
prone for stroke.
Okay.
And there are about 1.5 billion stroke survivors worldwide. Sorry, people with high blood pressure worldwide. And there are about 5.8 million in Malaysia. And this was 2010 data.
Okay.
So you can expect the numbers to be higher in 2015. And there was a Ministry of Health report whereby they said that the younger population, okay, you say about more than 18 years of age, about 30% of population more than 18 years of age is hypertensive.
Okay.
That accounts for about 1 in 3. And if you go for further higher age, about 30 years and above, it's about 40% of population is hypertensive. It accounts for about 1 to 2. Okay. But the important thing is to consider is there are some who are diagnosed and there are some who are not diagnosed. And that is the whole issue. People think, oh, it's too high, the value, the data. But do we know whether we are hypertensive or not? We have not checked our values. Right? So that's the most important thing. We don't know our values.
So those who are walking around undiagnosed are at of course bigger risk, because you will have no idea if and when a stroke happens. You don't even know if you are having that, because you think, no, I'm a healthy person, this should not happen.
Exactly is what we see when the patients come to us. When we ask for the history and they say, oh, I had a stroke because I had high blood pressure. And when we inquire further, were you under medication? No. Why? I didn't know I had high pressure. Right? So they only realize it's after the stroke. Then, okay, when the hospital inquires, they go for the test and they say, oh, they had so high pressure. So we see a number of cases in this category. And there's one more thing. There are a category whereby, yes, I know I have high blood pressure, but over time, I'm tired eating medicine, so I decide myself I should stop taking medicine.
Because I feel okay, I feel fine.
Yeah, because I'm under medication, right? So I feel fine. So I decide, okay, I don't have to see a doctor to decide, I can decide for myself, so I stop medication. After a few weeks, the person had a stroke. Okay, then there's other category whereby because it's important to take medicine for high pressure. Okay, it's very important. Okay, I'm taking this medicine and I switched to alternative medicine without consulting my doctor. I end up with a stroke. So there are so many things. It's not only about I don't know about hypertension. I know about hypertension, but I stopped taking medicine also is one of the biggest risk factor for stroke.
Okay, that we're talking about high blood pressure, and then we look into diabetes. Malaysia is known as one of the...
It's about 10th laziest country in the world. Okay, and if you see about
not a laughing matter, by the way, but
if you see about diabetes, the data, the statistics about this, you say 1 in 5 Malaysian is diabetic. Okay, and when you say 1 in 5, there's again for each one diagnosed, there's one that is undiagnosed. Okay, so this one is those who are diagnosed. There are certain a population who are not even diagnosed, and there are about 3.8 million diabetics in Malaysia. So the numbers are quite high, and again the numbers are 2010 because there was no update after that. So expect the numbers to be really high now.
So millions and millions of Malaysians are affected by one of these 4. We look at major risk factors, which is high blood pressure, high blood cholesterol, diabetes, and obesity, and it also seems to be affecting the younger ones much earlier than it used to, and that's also because of the change in our lifestyle. Now, what can be done when the person right in front of you, as we were talking before the break, has a stroke? What is the immediate reaction? How do we train? How do we create that awareness for the person sitting across to immediately act as fast as possible?
So one is understanding what is happening. Okay, so that understanding only comes once you are aware of what is stroke and what are the signs to look for whether the person is having a stroke or not. So all these things are done through public awareness. That's why we are really involved, actively involved in creating public awareness. We go to corporate offices, anybody who invites us for a talk, we always go for the talks, because we take it very seriously that it's always better to prevent a stroke rather than to treat a stroke.
That's right.
Because there's one more thing is, stroke recovery is never 100%. So whatever happened, you're never going to be the same person again. You're going to be a different person altogether.
But there is life after stroke. There is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes.
It is not the end. Now, for the person who is seeing someone having a stroke, it's important to be aware, to know the steps to take. But if you were having a stroke as well, you should also know what you can do. And you were saying you had some callers.
Yes.
Tell us about
So we had about 2 callers that just happened last month. So there was one caller who was calling us. He was having a chat with the father and suddenly realized that the father is leaning to one side and he was not talking clearly to, so he was having a stroke. So I think he just googled for our number and found our number and called us and asked what to do. So although we asked him to go to the nearest possible hospital, a specialist one, and there was another guy who was on the road, he was driving and suddenly he felt that he's not able to hold the steering properly. So he just parked the car to one side and called us immediately and we directed him to the hospital. So it can happen anywhere, you know. That's very
So it's a bit different from the reaction one would get from having a heart attack, where you're completely unable to function. Here with the stroke, you're still able to function.
Yeah, because
to
there's
some
one
extent.
side of the body that's still working. Stroke affects only one side. So there's one side that's still working.
Either the left or the right, depending on where.
Yeah,
the
if your
is.
left brain is affected, then your right side is paralyzed. If it is right affected, then your left side is paralyzed. Yeah.
So we talked about life after having a stroke. What is the recovery process like? How long is it? What is involved in a recovery process?
Recovery is a journey. Okay, it can't happen in a day. It can't happen in 2 days, in 1 week. It's not possible at all. So recovery it's different for different persons because stroke is not same for everybody. For some people, the stroke affects only their ability to communicate. So their recovery is different. The recovery process itself is different. For some, it's a paralysis. So the recovery process is different. So we just can't say how long it's going to take to recover. Okay, it can take any amount of time, but on what factors contribute to the recovery, it's the age of the person. A younger person recovers faster because the brain is young and that neuroplasticity happens faster. Your determination, your will to recover is the most important thing. Even if you are young, you have no determination to recover, you will not recover at all. Even if you are elderly but you want to recover, you are motivated to recover, you are going to recover. Then the severity of the stroke. How massive is your stroke? If your stroke affected the major portion of your brain, then we expect a lot of damage. Okay. If it's a small area of the brain affected, then we expect a small minor impairment, physical impairment. So all these things can lead to make sure that there's no possible, we can predict that okay, he's going to recover in 1 month, he's going to recover in 2 months. That's not possible for us. That's why we say it's different from each stroke survivor. But what depends is whether they go to right place to seek the right advice and they do it. If all these 3 things are happening, the recovery is faster.
What is the average duration, or you can't really say?
It's quite difficult to say.
Different from person to person. Would it be safe to say that those who are younger may recover faster if they had the will?
Yes, they definitely recover faster. But then again, the thing is how much recovery is going to take place. It's never going to be 100%. Okay.
But you are still able to live a normal life. You're still able to, drive a car and go back to work.
Oh, we have so many stroke survivors who have gone back to work, especially the younger population, because they are so determined to go back to work, right? And they are the one who are running the family in certain cases. So they definitely work so hard and they go back to work. It's not like stroke will limit you to certain places. No, that was the old thing. A person had a stroke, okay, fine. He is to be limited to the house. No, that's not the case. There is life after stroke, and that's what we advocate. There is life after stroke. It's just like you take the right steps and we'll ensure you there's life after stroke.
So all the help is available in terms of rehab, and of course to get yourself back to as normal as you can be, because I also assume that there may be many of our viewers out there who know of someone who has a stroke and has not had the kind of help that they need to undergo a proper rehab process. And so your place to go is of course the National Stroke Association of Malaysia, which will be able to provide you with all the help that the survivor may need. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll be talking about an upcoming event that NASAM is organizing called the Fun Fair at the Park. Very colourful, very exciting event. Stay tuned to know more about that. We'll be right back. Hi, we're back in conversation with Mr. Qamer Khan, who is the Rehabilitation Training and Development Head at the National Stroke Association of Malaysia. Now, we have discussed at length about the risk factors of stroke, what can be done to prevent it, and some of the symptoms. But let's now look at some of the myths. We want to debunk. There's many myths surrounding strokes. So tell us two most important ones that are circulating out there, which are completely untrue.
You can see like a lot of messages being circulated on the WhatsApp usually. Okay?
And email as well. I've received this one as well.
So one of them was, okay, if a person has stroke, yes, it's a burst in the brain. So don't move the person. If you move him, it's going to shake the head and you get some more, but the capillary will burst again. But that's not true.
It's completely untrue.
Because if you don't move, how are you going to take the person to hospital? You're going to keep him there or what?
But does movement make a difference in making the condition worse for the patient? No,
it won't make it, because you don't jerk the patient. You're just carrying the patient to another place.
Moving him from one place to another. Yeah.
So that's completely not possible. That if you don't move him, it's going to prevent him. That's not
because
possible.
This comes back to one of the most important things when a person is undergoing stroke, to get to the hospital ASAP, as soon as possible.
Yes. Okay. Another one is that's commonly be circulated is, okay, if a person having a stroke, okay, there's so much pressure in the brain, you should release it by doing, either prick the fingertips.
Prick the fingertips, all fingertips using a needle to
release the blood, and they say it releases the pressure. That's not possible at all. That's not possible.
So that it has got nothing to do.
Because there are two types of stroke. One is a block, whereby the blood cannot go through. Another is hemorrhage, where the blood has leaked out of the capillaries into the brain. So there's already a blood leaking in the brain, and you want to leak it some more. You're going to further reduce the pressure.
That's right.
Or there's a block, the blood is not going through. How will this going to help with the block over there? That's completely a myth, not possible at all.
So it is a myth. Be sure to be well informed, and because this circulates so much, and people end up thinking that they're sharing it, thinking it's a way to prevent, a way to help, in a moment of emergency, but it's not true. Share with us some of the success stories, or some of the case studies that you have come to learn about some of the survivors.
Okay, so I just focus on the young survivors. So we have this guy who's a Malaysian. He's a mechanical engineer, aged about 33. Okay, he's working as a mechanical engineer in Singapore. So he had his first stroke in 2013 early part. Okay. So he, as a normal routine, he was just going to work, and he realized that he is having difficulty in moving, and they admit to the hospital, went for certain tests, and realized that he had a stroke. A very active guy, he likes to do car racing and all those things. So okay, but since it was a minor stroke, he recovered very fast. So then he took all the precautions to make sure that there is no recurrent stroke. And what happened last year? He had another stroke. Okay, and this time he decided to come back to Malaysia. So he came back to Malaysia, he registered with us, and since he's quite young, he's motivated because he wants to go back to work. So both two factors, they contribute to his recovery, and within a month he recovered. When he came back, he had difficulty walking. He was on the wheelchair brought by the family, and within a month he recovered enough to go back to Singapore and start working again.
Walking and everything.
Walking
again.
everything, yeah, because he's a mechanical engineer. He has to walk in his field of his own occupation. So he went back to the work. So hopefully he's there all the time now.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Now we're looking at an event that is happening, organized by NASAM. It's called the Fun Fair at the Park. It's on the 14th of June from 8 AM to 2 PM in Taman Jaya, in Petaling, Jaya. Looks really fun, and looks like everyone's coming together to make this possible. Tell us more about this annual food and fun fair.
So this is the biggest challenge that we have. NASAM being an NGO, so we really depend on the generosity of the public and the donors to contribute to our, because to run 8 clubs nationwide is not easy.
Course,
it's quite hard to raise funds to sustain all these 8 centers, and we have a mission and a vision of having a stroke center in all the states in Malaysia. So we want to help as many as people as possible, because now we are limited to 8 clubs in all the major states. But there are certain people who need our help, but we can't reach to them. So to be in all the states, we need to have clubs in all the states, and for that we need funds. And this is one of the events which we use to raise funds to sustain our cost of surviving in this area.
So it's a one half-day event, a fundraiser event that is open to everyone. All are welcomed, and it is basically to raise funds for the association so that they can go out there and help more. Now, how you can help if you're watching at home for this event is you can help to make a cash donation, or you could be a sponsor of products or items at some of the stalls for prizes, perhaps at some of the game stalls. You could even sponsor a stall at 3,000 ringgit, and you could of course come there and purchase, be part of the event, bring the family, purchase food and funfair coupons at only 10 ringgit per booklet. Now there is the contact number as well. The contact number is 0379561876 and an email which is info@nasam.org, and of course the website www.nasam.org, and also a Facebook page that is very much updated daily. It is facebook.com/National Stroke Association Malaysia, where you'll find all the information about stroke as well as NASAM's activities. Now, I think there was also just a video that was uploaded. So if you go and like the page, you'll be able to see this video immediately. It's a 5-minute video that shares everything you need to know about a stroke and what you can do to help to prevent this. Now, final message is that a stroke is preventable.
Stroke is preventable. It's very much preventable. You just have to take the right steps to prevent stroke. But there are certain who had a stroke. For them, there is still life possible after stroke through guidance.
Through guidance and through support, of course, and through motivation to be
very important.
Very
very
important.
important.
And for those of us who are still living a happy, healthy lifestyle every day, just to know that we need to be grateful for that. So often we forget that there's so many dangers that lurk around the corner, which may affect any one of us at any one time. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for being on the show. Such a pleasure to have you and speak to you. Thank you for shedding light on stroke and how we can all help to prevent this. Well, that's all the time we have. Have a wonderful day ahead and stay healthy. Bye-bye.